Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the show. It is Halloween's Eve, and we are here because we're going to talk about it all. But welcome to the Civil Point with none other than your host, moi, Ariana Dieva. We are back with a brand new episode for you, and we are going to talk about it all. Like I said, it is Halloween Eve, so I am a little bit dressed up, a little bit dragged up and done up a little bit. And honestly, I am something that the Republicans truly have a problem with, and that is their desire, their lust for a woman like me. So I am ready to get into it today. We are talking about how JD Vance is a complete and utter insane imbecile, idiotic maniac who is next in line for presidency if Cheeto Bandito croaks and leaves this earth. And I don't know how I feel about that, because I was watching this interview with him earlier with, her name is, let me just get the name here, Miranda Devine. And I was watching it and I was just like, oh my God, this isn't true. This isn't true. This isn't true. He's stating all these things, and even the interviewer are stating things that just are not true. And I'm just like, we have a psychopath, a sociopath, a straight up liar, fabricator in the White House who's next in line, who has no backbone. It's like, oh my God, what are we going to do if Cheeto Bandito croaks and we get Justina Diva Vance in the White House? Justina Diva is my nickname for him because he's a failed drag queen. We all know it. We all know, with the amount of eyeliner and makeup he puts on to get onto the Turning Point USA stage. We all know that man is a failed drag queen. Anyway, so we're going to talk about this interview with JD Vance and Miranda Devine and how everything, I got through 30 minutes of it, and I was just like, I fact checked it during the interview, and I was like, let me make sure this is true. And it's a lie. Let me make sure this is true. And it's another lie. And let me make sure this is true. And it's another lie. And I'm just like, how can we have a president that manipulates the public view through straight up fabrications and lies? And it's like, a lot of the audience, especially MAGA, don't go out and fact check for themselves. It's like, damn, they're being fed all this information and it's complete and utter lies. So we're going to get into this interview today. But before I get into the interview, it's so funny. I saw this on X, and I don't know how they can justify it if it ever did happen. But I know that Justina Diva is not in love with his Hindu Indian wife. We all know it. I mean, he doesn't defend her. He's never going to defend her. I think he loved her at one point. But because of how the optics are in regards to MAGA, she doesn't serve a purpose. But I don't like to speculate on things. I like to have proof. But I just found this funny that there was this idea going around on X about Justina Diva and Erica Kirk. Oh my God, it's not up. Wait, it's not up. What are we doing? What are we doing? Are we not up? Why are we not up? Why are we not up? Okay, there we go. We're up. Now we're up. We're rocking and rolling here. Okay, so it's so funny because there's this, idea going around.
No one will ever replace my husband. No. But I do see some similarities of my husband in JD and Vice President JD Vance. I do. And that's why I'm so blessed to be able to introduce him tonight.
Look at the smile.
Because he understands the fight that we're up against. And he can articulate that in a way that transcends. He's an amazing man. No one will ever replace my husband.
See, now, in my opinion, I'm not speculating here, but I'm speculating. Okay? I'm just saying, they would be a power couple. With the martyr that she is in regards to her husband's passing and horrible, horrific death, to JD Vance having such power as vice president and next in kin and line for the presidency, I'm just saying they would be a disgusting power couple when it comes to just swamping up America even more than it's already been, submerged in the swamp as it is. And it's just like, oh my God, how can they justify that? But then again, maggots and the right wing, they continue to justify immoral things all the time. So for JD Vance to, get a divorce from his wife, to then see and potentially even marry Erica Kirk, listen, they will justify it somehow. It will be like, oh, well, she was a Hindu. She was never really... JD Vance's wife is a Hindu. She was never really a Christian, so they have the right to divorce. They would make that kind of excuse if, for some reason, in the future, Erica Kirk and JD Vance decide to see each other, and it's exposed as an affair. The right and the religious fanatics will justify it somehow. They will find some way to justify immorality in their book, which is written as law, as some kind of justification to let go of it and to just say, shit happens. They're very hypocritical and they will find a way to justify it. But like I said, it's speculation. It's funny. It's haha. It's nothing crazy. It's just haha. And I don't believe it. But I'm just saying, the right, the MAGA, the maggots, the religious institutions will find a way. If JD Vance wants to divorce his wife for Erica Kirk, they will find a way to justify it. Hypocrisy at its finest. But let's go ahead and get into this interview with JD Vance here. But I want to actually keep on Turning Point USA real quick, actually, because JD Vance was at a Turning Point USA event, and he was confronted by this phenomenal young woman.
You're talking about, what do you mean specifically? Are you talking about testosterone, estrogen?
So he was confronted by this phenomenal young woman who articulated a question that is very significant in today's day and age, in today's day in politics, in today's day in American culture and history. And that question was, I'll let her actually ask it here. So let's go ahead and watch this.
You are raising three kids in interracial, cultural, racial, religious household. How are you maintaining, or how are you teaching your kids not to keep your religion ahead of their mother's religion? Or how are you teaching them that your kind, that kind who got here just a few years or few decades ago is different or is better than your mom's kind who got here just a generation before? How are you balancing that? And when you talk about too many immigrants here, when did you guys decide that number? Why did you sell us a dream? You made us spend our youth, our wealth in this country and gave us a dream. You don't owe us anything. We have worked hard for it. Then how can you as a vice president stand there and say that we have too many of them now and we are going to take them out to people who are here rightfully so by paying the money that you guys asked us? You gave us the path, and now how can you stop it and tell us we don't belong here anymore?
So,
and one more thing, one more thing.
Sure.
Do you have to be...
I don't know if I'm going to remember all this, but
yeah,
I will try.
I'm sorry. I had to say all of this, and please take it with you. I mean, I'm saying all of this with
go ahead.
I have no intention of causing a scene here or anything, but...
We're not close to causing a scene, don't worry.
But we talked about Christianity, all of this. I'm not even Christian, and I'm here standing to so support. Why are we making Christianity one of the major things that you have to have in common to be one of you guys, to show that I love America just as you do? Why is that still a question? Why do I have to be a Christian?
Okay.
Now that woman, whoever her name is, we need to find her out, because that is an American patriot right there. And that is the God's honest truth of a question. Why does Christianity have to be labeled as America's religion, as some kind of poster religion for American values? Now, what JD Vance says really contradicts, and he continuously does this in his interviews. He says one thing that drives inclusion, but then he sentiments it in loaded language that contradicts with ulterior motives. So let's go ahead and watch what his response is.
So there was a lot there, and I'm going to try to respond to as much of it as I can. So on the question of immigration. So first of all, I can believe that we should have lower immigration levels. But if the United States passed a law and made a promise to somebody, the United States, of course, has to honor that promise. Nobody's talking about that. I'm talking about people who came in violation of the laws of the United States of America, and I'm talking about in the future reducing the number of people. Sorry, what?
Can I continue on that? Because when you just said you are not stopping with the people who came here legally, right? But you are pushing out policies that hurt us. And these policies are not even solving the problems. These policies are just creating chaos.
Ma'am, okay, so
And she's 100% right. The policies such as, ICE deportations and detentions and, going around to cities and neighborhoods and abducting people into unmarked vans. It's creating so much more chaos. It's divisive. It's ripping apart families. And it's ripping apart people who are American citizens, because it's not only Spanish people that are being directly targeted through this discriminatory policy and these discriminatory actions by a personal militia of Donald Trump. It's literally ripping apart and now starting to target other demographics of people, as we've always said it would extend to. It's not about a particular demographic of people when it comes to a cult that has this cultivized incentive to have this white nationalism rule America. And this is what is so dangerous when it comes to Christianity, and why it is so dangerous, because they want to instill Christian values into every single sector of the United States. And this is what the contradiction and hypocrisy of his statement states in a few seconds. We'll get to it.
Again, I'm gonna finish answering the question, and then if I've answered all 9 of your questions in less than 15 minutes, then we can keep on going. We gotta have a little fun, right? So here's the thing. I can believe that the United States should lower its levels of immigration in the future, while also respecting that there are people who have come here through lawful immigration pathways that have contributed to the country. But just because one person, or 10 people, or 100 people came in legally and contributed to the United States of America, does that mean that we're thereby committed to let in 1 million, or 10 million, or 100 million people a year in the future? No, that's not right. We cannot have, I'll go and finish, we cannot have an immigration policy where what was good for the country 50 or 60 years ago binds the country inevitably for the future. There's too many people who want to come to the United States of America, and my job as vice president is not to look out for the interests of the whole world, it's to look out for the people of the United States. Now,
that's a stupid little talking point. And, it's obviously true in regards to policy, and things change and immigration levels change throughout our American history. But what is untrue in what he said is that he's fighting for America, because America has not necessarily open borders, but we welcome everyone to come here, whether they're coming here to start a new life, whether they're seeking asylum from their own countries that are trying to, them. It's just, we have a certain extent to open borders. And when we have administration that's continuously trying to close those borders indefinitely for everyone, it is the antithesis of what America actually stands for.
Now, you asked a personal question about our interfaith household. And yes, my wife did not grow up Christian. I think it's fair to say that she grew up in a Hindu family, but not a particularly religious family in either direction. In fact, when I met my wife, I would consider myself an agnostic or an atheist, and that's what I think she would consider herself as well. Everybody has to come to their own arrangement here. The way that we've come to our arrangement is, she's my best friend, we talk to each other about this stuff. So we decided to raise our kids Christian. Our 2 oldest kids who go to school, they go to a Christian school. Our 8-year-old did his first communion about a year ago. That's the way that we have come to our arrangement. But, thank you. My 8-year-old was also very proud of his first communion. Thank you, guys. I'll tell him that Ole Miss wishes him the best. But I think everybody has to have this own conversation when you're in a marriage. I mean, it's true for friends of mine who are in Protestant and Catholic marriages, friends of mine who are in atheist and Christian marriages. You just got to talk to. The only advice I can give is you just got to talk to the person that God has put you with, and you've got to make those decisions as a family unit. For us, it works out. Now, most Sundays, Usha will come with me to church. As I've told her, and I've said publicly, and I'll say now in front of 10,000 of my closest friends, do I hope eventually that she is somehow moved by the same thing that I was moved in by church? Yeah, I honestly do wish that, because I believe in the Christian gospel, and I hope eventually my wife comes to see it the same way. But if she doesn't, then God says everybody has free will, and so that doesn't cause a problem for me. That's something you work out with your friends, with your family, with the person that you love. Again, one of the most important Christian principles is that you respect free will. Usha's closer to the priests who baptized me than maybe I am. They talk about this stuff. My attitude is you figure this stuff out as a family, and you trust in God to have a plan, and you try to follow it as best as you can. And that's what I try to do.
Okay. So he said, you trust in God to figure it out. You have the talks with your family. He's advocating here for the separation of church and state, correct? He is vehemently advocating and personally practicing the definition of what the separation of church and state. And yet, here's the contradiction of it all in his statement that he was able to have this discussion with his wife and implement how they live because they had a conversation. But he and his administration are implementing policies like Project 2025 that is treating the Christian Bible as a lawmaking material to destroy the United States and destroy the separation of church and state. So again, here is the contradictions when it comes to JD Vance. He's preaching in this moment the separation of church and state. He's saying he practices the separation of church and state, and he's able to have these conversations with his wife to raise his family how they see fit. But on the back end, on the political end, on the policy end, he continues to advance these policies and the rhetoric that looks to deteriorate the actual separation of church and state and actually implement policies that don't allow these conversations to be held in homes because they want Christianity to be the one true religion and the poster religion of the United States. So again, how can you trust a man who recently, as of 2019, became a Christian, who now is preaching church and state, practices it, but doesn't allow other people to? That's the hypocrisy when it comes to JD Vance. That's the hypocrisy when it comes to the people who are in charge of this country. They are allowed the freedom to practice what they want, but the American public has to go by the rule of law of the Bible that isn't even a true rule of law. It's a depiction, it's a fairy tale, and practically a fabrication of events that truly possibly never really happened because there's no definitive proof of them. So the fact that they continue to sit here and say, well, JD Vance specifically, and, the administration, practice of, freedom and, you have your freedoms, but implement policies on the back end that don't allow freedom, it's the hypocrisy of it all for me. Let's continue on here.
Make a final point. So I don't want to cut you off. I want to be respectful to all the people behind you in line, but I want to make this point about immigration, okay? If you ask the question, what is the exact right number of immigrants for the United States to let in, it is just very specific on the context. If you go back to the 1920s, the United States passed an Immigration Reform Act that effectively cut down immigration to close to zero for 40 years in this country. And what happened over those 40 years? The many, many people who had come from many different foreign countries and different foreign cultures, they assimilated into American culture. And there was an expectation that they would assimilate into American culture. I think we have two problems in our immigration system today. My guess is you're probably a slightly more leftist political persuasion, liberal political persuasion, maybe not. But here's the thing. I remember back in my establishment GOP days when I was still very early getting involved in Republican politics, I remember a conservative think tank person who told me that one of the reasons why immigration was really good is that if you had enough diversity in a country, people would mistrust each other and they wouldn't join labor unions. Okay? So when I see a lot of left-wing people who theoretically support organized labor saying we need to flood the country with a limitless number of immigrants, they're unwilling to set any limitations on it, my response to that is you are destroying the very social trust on which American freedom and prosperity was.
See, this is what I'm saying. The loaded language of it all, it's used to manipulate public perception. He talks about immigration and then uses the loaded language of distrust to literally tell people that immigration causes distrust in work unions. Like, where's the mix? Where does it connect? There's no coherence in this man's statements. And it really does. It pisses me off, especially when it comes to the hypocrisy and the contradictions of Justina Diva. Like, it's just weird to me that he sits here, preaches separation of church and state in his own home. He's able to practice it, have those discussions, which religion that he wants his kids to be raised in with his wife. Allegedly he has these discussions and she wasn't forced to make her kids Christian, allegedly. But he's saying he practices this separation of church and state, but he's not going to allow other people to. And I just want to point out that this woman that stood up there and asked that question is an American patriot because she is 100% right. Other religions, other demographics, other groups of people have paid their dues in this country to earn the freedoms that the Constitution constitutionally gives them. So to sit here and have JD Vance sit on a Turning Point USA stage and preach separation of church and state, but on the back end implementing policies that destroys that sentiment of America, it's complete and utter bullshit. So for this woman who stood there and asked those questions, I 100% applaud you because that's brave. That's calling out the bullshit at its face, at the face of the administration being JD Vance. He's a vice president. So congratulations, and I applaud that girl for asking those questions. But I also wanted to go ahead and tackle another interview with JD Vance. And honestly, this whole episode is about Justina Diva. I know he wants his moment, so he gets his moment today. So Justina Diva had an interview with Miranda, what's her name? Miranda Devine. And I didn't get through, I maybe got through 26 minutes. And at 30 minutes, I was like, I can't do this anymore. Because everything that the interview says as fact, everything that JD Vance says in rhetorical response is just lies. And I'm sitting here and I'm just like, how can people sit here and listen to this and digest the amount of just misinformation from our vice president, especially when I'm sitting here listening and fact checking in real time. I'm like, everything he's saying is a lie. So let's go ahead and get into this interview with JD Vance and Miranda Devine. So let me just pull this up here. That's if it wants to work. All right.
It's a miracle human.
So this first clip that I want to talk about, let's play it here.
History happened right at that very spot. It was unbelievable.
Wow. And I mean, as a new Catholic, I guess, since 2019, you've met two popes already.
I know, it's crazy.
I mean, Pope Francis, and then he keeled over.
Yeah, I know, poor Pope Francis. Yeah. No, it's when I met Pope Francis, he was very frail, but I didn't realize he was that sick.
No.
And we had, whenever you go and you do these diplomatic missions, and there's always some element of protocol and formality to it. But I remember I talked to the
Can we look at his face in this?
Yeah. No.
Look at his face. Okay, first of all, I never knew that JD Vance was just a new Christian. He was a new Christian as of 2019. Like, this is my problem. You guys are following someone who is new to a religion, who knows really probably nothing about the religion, and grifted off the religion and tried to become a Christian to grift off of Christian values and gain sympathy votes. Okay? So for this man to sit here and talk about Pope Francis, who healed over, and have this look of reminisce on his face. You know how everyone always, alleged at the time that JD Vance was the death angel and brought death to Pope Francis? It's funny because he has this face on like he's reminiscing about a time that he did something that he loved. Like killing the Pope. It's crazy to me. So I personally didn't know that JD Vance was a new Christian. I always thought that he was just Christian. He grew up Catholic or something, but no, apparently he was atheist or agnostic prior to his, conversion to Christianity. And I just find it funny how, ironically, in 2019, he converted to Christianity when it served a purpose for him to be elected as vice president of the United States. Do you guys not see the timeline of events and how this adds up to a manipulation and a perversion of your Christian religion, that you're listening and following people that actually don't know the religion and is newly Christian, and in 2019 just, was like, let me be Christian? I don't believe it. There's something fishy. There's something there's chunks in the milk here. Something's not right. And I want to also talk about this portion with Steve Bannon, because not only is JD Vance a new Christian, right? Steve Bannon comes into this interview and says this.
Well, he's going to get a third term. So Trump 28, Trump is going to be president 28, and people just ought to get accommodated with that.
So what about the 22nd Amendment?
There's many different alternatives. At the appropriate time, we'll lay out what the plan is, but there's a plan, and President Trump will be the president in 28. We had longer odds in 16 and longer odds in 24 than we got in 28. And President Trump will be the president of the United States, and the country needs him to be president of the United States. We have to finish what we started. And the way we finish it through Trump. Trump is a vehicle. I know this will drive you guys crazy, but he's a vehicle of divine providence. He's an instrument. He's very imperfect. He's not churchy, not particularly religious, but he's an instrument of divine will. And you can.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that? He's not churchy. He's not churchy. He's not particularly religious. Trump. This is Steve Bannon saying that Donald Trump, the shit stain of America, is not particularly religious and he's not churchy, but he ran on Christian values and loving the Bible and loving God, but he's not religious or churchy. This whole administration bamboozled the Christian faith. I'm telling you straight up. Not only is JD Vance a new Christian who probably knows nothing about Christianity and converted to Christianity out of the fact that it would get him votes and an opportunity to serve in the White House, but Steve Bannon is sitting here saying straight up, Donald Trump is not churchy, Donald Trump is not religious, we're just using him because he's a vehicle for MAGA, who is not a Christian, well, I don't want to say they're not a Christian, but they use Christianity as a vehicle to get votes. It's deceptive. It's very deceptive. So, again, you have all these people coming out and blatantly saying that they don't follow the Christian religion, but you voted for them because they followed the Christian religion. Isn't that insanity? You voted for these people that don't follow your religion and used it as a crutch to gain power. And it's written in fact with Steve Bannon saying it. It's written in fact with JD Vance converting to Christianity in 2019, which the timeline correlates with him getting the opportunity to run alongside, potentially Donald Trump. It's all the writing on the walls. These people don't give two fucks about your religion. They don't. What they give a fuck about is greed and power and grifting off your religion to succeed in that greed and power and take over America. And once they have that power, you think they're going to care about your religion, your Bible? No, they're not going to follow it. They're going to manipulate it and pervert it into sections and into law in the United States that restricts minority groups of people, that destroys civil rights. That's what they're going to do. And they're not going to allow you to have your Christianity, your faith in your book. It's going to be a new form of Christianity where you have to kneel and heel and bow down to what is to come. And that is this new implementation of a dictatorship of America. It was never about Christian values. It was about power, and it was about greed, and it was about control. And they used your Christian religion to manipulate it. So, as we continue on here, in JD Vance's interview, he just spouts so many damn lies. So the first one I want to talk about is he lies about JD Vance's, Justina Diva lies about Biden's stance on abortion. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure Biden never said what he's saying he said. So let's go ahead and take a look at this here while I get it up.
Was like the most extreme possible on the abortion issue. I mean, it was taxpayer funded because Biden was particularly egregious on the abortion issue. I mean, I was growing up, Democrats would say we want abortion to be safe, legal, and rare. Biden was like the most extreme possible on the abortion issue. I mean, it was taxpayer funded abortion up to the moment of birth, absolutely no limits.
And he espoused that. It wasn't like other people were putting that into his mouth.
That was what he actually said and appeared to have actually.
He spouts that. It's not like other people were putting that into his mouth about having late term abortions up to the 9th month, right? Let's fact check that. Let's show what Biden's stance was on abortion, okay? Remember, the interviewer said no one put that in his mouth. No one put that in Biden's mouth. Biden said it from his own mouth. JD Vance said that Biden was extreme in his abortion views, okay? Now let's talk about the fact check here.
Roe v. Wade, which had 3 trimesters. The first time is between the woman and the doctor. Second time is between the doctor and an extreme situation. The third time is between the doctor, between the woman and the state. The idea that the politicians, the founders wanted the politicians to be the ones making decisions about women's health is ridiculous. That's the last, no politician should be making that decision. A doctor should be making those decisions. That's how it should be run. That's what you're going to do. And if I'm elected, I'm going to restore Roe v. Wade.
So that means he can take the life of the...
So, He's saying that a doctor should be in charge. A doctor and the patient should be in charge of the decision in regards to abortion. Nowhere did Joe Biden say that he wants late-term abortions. Nowhere was his views extreme in regards to abortions. Now, let's talk about that interviewer who said, Biden used those words out of his own mouth. No one put them in his mouth. Listen to Trump here.
Take the life of the baby in the 9th month and even after birth, because some states, Democrat run, take it after birth. Again, the former governor of Virginia, put the baby down, then we decide what to do with it. So he's willing to, as we say, rip the baby out of the womb in the 9th month and kill the baby. Nobody wants that to happen. Democrat or Republican, nobody wants it to happen.
That is simply not true.
It looks like Trump put those words out. Biden never spoke them. And yet the interviewer, Miranda, comes out with these lies, saying that no one put those words in Joe Biden's mouth. Joe Biden spoke them from his own lips. No, honey. Trump spoke that. Trump put that misinformation out there. And Biden straight up said, no, that's a lie.
That Roe v. Wade does not provide for that. That's not the circumstance. Only woman's life is in danger. She's going to die. That's the only circumstance where that can happen. But we are not for late-term abortion, period.
We are not for late-term abortion, period. So again, it's just more lies in this interview from JD Vance and the interviewer to manipulate this perception of the left allowing babies to be murdered after birth and up to birth. Like, it's crazy. And the fact that this interviewer is sitting here saying it as fact, when obviously I'm fact checking it right now, this information never happened. It's like, why does this get to be put out on a public platform for public consumption, especially when our vice president, one of the highest positions in power, should have the integrity to not lie about these things? It's insane to me. Freaking insane. So another section of this interview here, I want to talk about immigration here. So we're going to go over here. Once I find the spot here. I don't know what happened to my clips. They just like all vanished. They all vanished and it's like so annoying. Okay, here we go. So this is a lie JD Vance wants to talk about, again, you know, what's new, about Catholic Church and border control. Let's take a look. Let's take a listen.
You know, the Pope is the Pope. What I try to interpret charitably is I think the Catholic Church recognizes we have to have border control. We have to have the ability to control the borders of our own country. That's very clearly written in Catholic teaching, is that nations are allowed sovereignty. They're allowed to control their own borders.
It's very clear in the Catholic Church and Catholic teachings that America has to have border control, that America has a right to border control. Correct. In some capacity, everyone has a right to guard their country. But in the implementation and the policy of it is where it gets a little bit murky, sticky, disgusting, and gross, especially with this administration, where they are now deporting people, and those deported people are lining up on overshore seas, shackled, dead. Okay? So, yeah, border control, but not murder, not abductions. This is what this administration is engaging and voluntarily participating in. Abductions and murders of immigrants in the United States. So I just want to also point out here. So he correlated Catholic teachings with border control. Nowhere in Catholic teachings, nowhere in the Bible, if we're going by the Bible as, you know, you want to go by if you're a Christian or a Catholic, nowhere in these teachings or in the Bible specifically does it have any implications in regards to border control. Okay? So let's talk about a few verses here and what the Bible actually says about border control. When a foreigner resides among you in your land, do not mistreat them. The foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. Love them as yourself. Leviticus 19:33-34. Is that what this country is doing by abducting people off the streets? Treating them as their own? Treating them as their neighbor? Is that what this country, this administration is doing by deporting people that are seeking asylum from tyrannical regimes that are looking to kill them? Is being, loving thy neighbor, what this country is doing by shipping people on planes to the middle of the seas and dropping them in and then having them shackled up and show up on overshore seas? No, that's not what this Leviticus is preaching. Leviticus is preaching the total opposite of what this administration is doing. How about Deuteronomy 10:18-19? He defends the cause of the fatherless and the widow, and loves the foreigner residing among you, giving them food and clothing. And you are to love those who are foreigners, for you yourselves were foreigners in Egypt. Straight up, feed the poor, feed the immigrants, clothe the poor, clothe the immigrants, treat them as you would treat your brother, your sister, your mother, your child. And yet this is not what this country is doing. Instead, they're revoking SNAP benefits that help feed communities and people, and they're revoking them. They're playing this literal antagonistic politics. For what? For what? To hurt immigrants. I mean, there's just so many different verses, and when it comes to Christianity in the Bible, Hebrews 13:2, do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing that same have entertained angels without knowing it. Like, there's just such a moral weight in regards to the Bible versus the antithesis of what this administration is continuously doing to hurt migrant and immigrant communities. It's the antithesis. And for JD Vance to sit here and say the Catholic teachings, the Bible says we must have borders. We must have some sort of control over our borders. To an extent, yes. But you get to allow people and not mistreat people who come to your country. That is what you guys are forgetting in this administration. That is what you guys are misrepresenting. And that's what you guys are diluting in regards to your policy. Because you don't truly care about the Bible. You truly care about controlling American soil and who gets to be on it. You don't care about what Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Matthew, and Hebrews say. You don't care about those verses. You care about manipulating them and fabricating lies that don't even exist in the Bible. So what I stress and what I continuously want everyone to do, especially when you listen to these interviews, fact check what this man says, because now this is 17 minutes into the interview with a few topics, and each topic is lied, manipulated, and twisted with unfactual and disinformation. Check and fact check these people, because it is straight up lies. So another lie that he wanted to go on a tangent about is election fraud. So let's go ahead into this one here.
Responsibility to protect is to stop the border crisis, which thanks to President Trump's leadership, that's exactly what we've done.
Why do you think Joe Biden and the Democrats, I mean, I've got that theory about Joe Biden sort of trying to save his soul, but why do you think the Democrats did this? Was it really just to juice up the census or get more voters?
I think it's complicated. I try to understand everybody's perspective even when I disagree with them strongly. I think the most obvious thing is that it completely distorts the democratic process in this country. When you let in millions upon millions of people, some of them will eventually get the ability to vote. It certainly distorts the congressional maps. And so I do think that they were using immigration to seize control illegitimately of the institution of this country. Some of them would say that openly, by the way. They would actually say, we want these new people to come in because we can't win the votes of the people who are already here, so we're going to import new voters to replace them. I think it's really a disgusting way to think about immigration. But
so in regards to this statement, in regards to immigration, it becomes inherently clear that these people continue to spout rhetoric, especially with loaded language, where it contradicts reality. When it comes to immigration, Donald Trump actually had quite a surge for the Republican Party in regards to Latino voters in 2024. And in his initial election, his first run, had significant turnover for Latino voters. So for Donald Trump and his administration to say that illegal immigrants contributed to voter fraud, which with unsubstantiated facts that even the Heritage Foundation disproved and proved as misinformation that there was no, and even if there was voter fraud, it was 0.00001% that could have affected votes and the election as a whole. So for these entities and audits to come out and say there's been no voter fraud that can significantly affect the election when it comes to the 2020 election that, he lost, it's nothing but more misinformation that JD Vance, Justina Diva, is spouting out here. So the fact that Donald Trump continues to pout about 2020 and losing, you also have to think about the fact that Latinos voted for him in a big way in 2020, in 2024, and in 2016. He was actually one of the largest Republicans in the modern era to have the Latino vote swing his way so much that it created a practically half-half demographic of Democratic Latinos and Republican Latinos. So are you saying, and it disputes his unsubstantiated facts that Latinos are the issue. It disputes his unsubstantiated facts that illegal immigrants contributed to voter fraud because there's no substantiated facts of that, let alone illegal immigrants can't vote. So all of these things that Donald Trump and JD Vance continues to spout on the daily with this misinformation and rhetoric and loaded language that misrepresents reality is harmful and it's untrue. And again, JD Vance sitting in this interview stating that immigrants were the problem in the elections. And it's just not true, especially when Latinos and immigrants who came to this country legally and voted for Trump in large numbers. So again, it's disproving any sort of allegations from this administration that voter fraud occurred in 2020 as well as 2024. Because Donald Trump, again, got the big swing in regards to Latino voters and even misrepresented communities. So it's complete and utter bullshit, more lies. But it gets better because JD Vance has more racism.
But some of them said that. Now, if I'm being a little bit more charitable, I think that was certainly going on. I also think that there was this distorted humanitarian thing going on where any law enforcement period, these people have convinced themselves is somehow unchristian or immoral. I think that's the wrong attitude to take because when you don't enforce the law against the people who violate the law, you empower the sex traffickers, you empower the murderers, and you empower the drug dealers. And so
you
bankrupt.
Let me make this make sense. And this goes to defund the police too. No one wants law enforcement to be disbanded. We want law enforcement to be reformed so they don't hurt American citizens, so they don't target American citizens. That is what we want this is what it means when it says defund the police. It means reform the police, so that way we can allow everyone to walk in the streets perfectly fine without a fear of being discriminated against.
Absolutely, you bankrupt the country. And so I think some people were motivated by a distorted humanitarian impulse. I think a lot of people just wanted to import voters. But regardless of the answer, I think the only thing that is both consistent from a humanitarian perspective, that is actually consistent with the duty that we owe to the American people, and also is just good for the country, is to do what President Trump has done, which is close the border and to ensure that anybody who comes into the country has to come through the legal pathway that we've agreed on. There's another thing that's going on, Miranda, that I think Democrats really underappreciated how bad it was for the country. Our immigration policy is set, in theory, by Democratic policy. You vote for congressmen and women. They enact the immigration policy. The President of the United States enforces that immigration policy. When you have millions upon millions of people coming into this country legally, it violates the fundamental social contract that the American people get to make our immigration law, not a lawless American president completely disregarding that law. And that's what happened, is a lot of Americans
lawless American president.
They're actually violating the law to let people come in, which drives up the cost of housing, actually has a lot of people competing against Americans for American jobs. And you do it in this fundamentally illegitimate way, because if Joe Biden stood before the American people and said, I'd like to let 5 million low-wage immigrants into this country every single year, the American people would say no. But he didn't.
About would you give illegal migrants free healthcare? And they all put their hand up and said, of course. Like it's just a
Here we
article
go.
of faith
This
in the
is what
Democratic
it was.
on stage. And they all asked a question about would you give illegal migrants?
No, but he didn't ask the American people. He just did it without asking permission.
In the Democratic primaries, when all the candidates.
But I also think
so. This section is important as well, because we'll let it play.
Delegitimizes the entire immigration system in this country.
But remember, in the Democratic primaries, when all the candidates, including Joe Biden, were standing up on stage, and they all asked a question about would you give illegal migrants free healthcare?
Free
healthcare. Put their hand up and said, of course. Like it's just an article of faith in the Democratic Party.
It's completely an article of faith. And think about how
Isn't that insanity? Because let's fact check that statement about free healthcare that Miranda said that Biden supported. Here's the actual clip.
Raise your hand if your government plan would provide coverage for undocumented immigrants.
Raise your hand if your plan would provide coverage for undocumented immigrants, not free healthcare for undocumented immigrants. There's a difference. When there's coverage, that means there's possibility and room for, payment plans, that there's possibility and room for enrollment in regards to healthcare. So that way people aren't charged up their ass when it comes to surgeries, when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to primary physicians, not just giving people free healthcare. So again, here's another contradicted lie, a manipulated lie that is stated in this interview from Miranda, when in truth, it's just stating that in this the part that she's saying is basically saying that it's healthcare. It's let's make a plan so people can afford healthcare in the United States, whether they're citizens or undocumented, because either way, if someone goes to the ER with a broken leg, it's going to be fixed. And honestly, if the immigrant fronts the bill, it's probably not going to be paid. So why not get a system in play where we are able to treat immigrants and illegal immigrants with healthcare, so that way our healthcare system isn't being manipulated and destroyed by deficits in regards to unpaid surgeries and unpaid physician visits and things of that nature. So for Miranda to sit here as a podcast host, as an interviewer, and say Biden rose his hand to give undocumented immigrants free healthcare is absurd. It's a lie. It's insanity. When, again, here's the fact check of it all. He said he wants to give them coverage, not some sort of free, unlimited healthcare plan for undocumented immigrants.
Bizarre that is, right? These programs exist as part of the social contract for United States citizens. You pay into the system, and if you need it, if you get down on your luck or you get to the point where you can't afford certain benefits, then you are able to take out of the system. That's the exchange that we have with our fellow citizens, in particular with our old age health insurance.
So in regards to that exchange that JD Vance just mentioned, you pour in, and then if you need it, you take out. Why wouldn't we allow undocumented immigrants to pour into that same systems like they do in their paychecks with Social Security and things of that nature? I don't see the problem. Even if you're an undocumented immigrant, it would help the United States for these undocumented immigrants to be covered in some capacity for healthcare rather than being uncovered, injured, and hurt in a workplace accident, and then the bill going to them where they can't even pay it. Wouldn't it make sense to have these undocumented immigrants covered to some extent so that way our hospitals don't get fronted with all these bills and we aren't in a deficit when it comes to healthcare? Like, am I crazy here? Or am I not? Because I don't think I am.
Insurance program. It is that you pay into the system your entire life, and when you get to the point where you're retired, you get access to high quality healthcare, right? That's the whole idea. If you're going to give Medicaid and Medicare benefits to illegal aliens, you completely destroy that system. You bankrupt it, and you make it so that Americans themselves are not able to access that system. I saw
That's not true. You can still access your health care. What are you talking about? See, this is, again, the divisive language that this administration uses. If everyone pays into a system, you still get to use that system. No, just because someone else is paying into it doesn't defeat or defund your actual implementation and your contributions to that system. It's actually adding more funds to the system so more people can have coverage as well as a way to pay off medical debt, to pay for surgeries and healthcare and primary care physicians and pediatricians. Like, what he's saying is complete fabrications and misrepresentations.
It was maybe yesterday or the day before, Miranda asked what share of illegal alien households compared to native-born American households are accessing welfare? And the answer was native-born American households at something like 30%, for illegal alien households at 60%. Now, what Democrats and their allies in the media will say, no, that's not how it works, because it says in the law that illegal aliens are not allowed to access welfare benefits. But there are innumerable exceptions to this rule. For example, the state of California under Gavin Newsom gives Medicaid benefits to illegal aliens. The housing benefits, while they're not supposed to go to illegal aliens, there's a lot of fraud. And then on top of the fraud, you have, if an illegal alien comes in and has a baby, then that baby can then access housing benefits through the parents, even though the parents are illegal aliens themselves. So there are all of these ways in which people are able to game the system, and it's why 60% of illegal alien households are benefiting from our welfare programs.
So I just want to say, again, this administration continues to throw out numbers and statistics that have no substantiated evidence. Look up the facts. Look up the facts of California Medicaid and immigrants, okay? This is untrue. And this is my problem with this administration. They're all fluff and no performance. Because when you talk about these plans that they look to destroy for human beings on American soil, they have no actual plan to replace it to help American citizens, to help immigrants. They just look to destroy and not actually reimburse and help and create a system that supports everyone. There's no backbone to this administration. It's all performative. It's not here to help human beings. It's not here to help Americans. They have no plan and no justification, and all they do is spout out unsubstantiated facts about misinformation that they developed and provided and are spewing out.
That's how you bankrupt this country and destroy those programs for the people who actually need it.
And that's how they can afford to take slave labor wages because they're subsidized. The taxpayers subsidize.
This is such an important point, Miranda, and it's something people don't appreciate. And by the way, they're willing to accept a standard of living that most Americans won't accept and shouldn't have to accept. And this was, if you remember, the big controversy about all of the migrants who came into Haiti.
So here's the racism. The racism, the lies that continue in regards to JD Vance and Trump, Justina Diva, and the shit stain of America. Let's go ahead. They're eating the cats and the dogs. They're eating the cats and the dogs. That never happened. What are you talking about? Here we go.
20,000 immigrants, Haitian migrants, in a town of 40,000 people. So you blink your eyes in Springfield, Ohio, and you wake up, and literally a third of the population of your town is now Haitian immigrants.
And eating cats and dogs.
Eating cats and dogs. Now, Biden paroled those immigrants.
She should not have a job. This woman should not have a job or a platform, because she's the one who is feeding this misinformation to JD Vance. And then JD Vance is obviously securing it and, condoning it. But, she should not have a job. I've literally stated out 3 or 4 points now where she's lied on Joe Biden, where she's lied about abortion, where she's lied about slave wages, where she's lied about now cats and dogs, the Haitians eating the cats and the dogs. But anyway, I digress. Let's continue on where JD Vance's specifically racist comments, and this is where I just couldn't do it anymore, and I tuned out. I was like, I can't do it anymore. Every segment, every portion, and every topic had a lie in it. There's no truth to any part of this interview.
Immigrants. And what did that mean? Those immigrants were now able, even if they didn't have kids, all of them were able to access housing benefits. So I would talk to constituents in Springfield, Ohio. This is when I was still a senator. This was before I was a vice presidential nominee. And here's the situation they would describe to me that happened in Springfield, Ohio. So you're a landlord and you're renting, let's say, a 3-bedroom house to a family of 4, family of 5. Okay. They're paying, let's say, $1,000 a month a couple of years ago in Springfield, Ohio to rent that house. Now, all of a sudden, 4 families of Haitian migrants come in, each of them getting $1,000 per family, and they're willing to put 20 people into a 3-bedroom house. So what does that do? That prices all of the American citizens out of those houses. Right. That drives up the rents for everybody, because now you have a 3-bedroom house that you can rent for $4,000 a month or $3,000 a month instead of $1,000 a month. That completely destroys the ability of Americans to live the American dream. And that's what those open borders did.
And creates division and hatred.
And of course it does. How could it not create division? I mean, let's say you're living.
How does that create division and hatred? I'm sorry, but do we not understand the economy right now? Even if we talk about kids that are getting out of college and can't find jobs in their career fields that they got a degree for, they're living at home. So how is a Spanish family or a Haitian family living in a apartment or a home with multiple family members any different from a college kid that can't find a job in a steady paying job and a living wage job, an affordable wage job for living? How is that any different than them going home after college? So immigrants are not allowed to band together and support each other, but white Christian nationalist college kids can go home and, live off their parents? It's the double standard. It's racism. Blatant racism.
Living in a house and your neighbors move out. We can hear Atlas shaking outside. He must just come in from outside. But you have, let's say, a family of 5 that you've known for 5 years, 10 years, moves out of the house, is actually evicted from the house because there are people who are going to pay more for rent. And then what happens is 20 people move into a 3-bedroom house, 20 people from a totally different culture, totally different ways of interacting. Again, we can respect their dignity while also being angry at the Biden administration for letting that situation happen and recognizing that their next door neighbor is going to say, well, wait a second, what is going on here? I don't know these people. They don't speak the same language that I do. And because there are 20 in the house next door, it's a little bit rowdier than it was when there was just a family of 4, a family of 5. It is totally reasonable and acceptable for American citizens to look at their next door neighbors and say, I want to live next to people who I have something in common with. I don't want to live next to 4 families of strangers. And the fact
it's totally reasonable and American to judge people on their skin color. That's called racism. That he literally just said the quiet part out loud. When do we get to choose our neighbors? If you move into a neighborhood, you don't just get to choose who lives next to you, unless you're in like an HOA or something like that. But like, you don't usually get to choose your neighbors. So I'm so dumbfounded by this conversation. And this is where I tuned out because I was like, all right, this is just racist rhetoric and Republican talking points and MAGA talking points used to push this agenda of immigration being evil and immigrants coming to this country being evil. Because, again, he used an analogy of 20 Haitian immigrants in one home. And again, I point out the difference. What's the difference between a Christian family banding together and renting out a home? It's only a problem if it's Haitian immigrants. It's only a problem if it's Latino immigrants, right? It's only a problem if it's Latinos, even if they're legal. It's only a problem if it's a black family. It's a little bit rowdy for the black family, but you know, we're not going to pay attention to the fact that Christians do the same thing to game the system in regards to rent, as he pointed out, right? White people do the same thing. It's not like being corrupting and creating distrust in the system isn't delegated to one group of person. Like, you can't, again, this administration boxes people, and that's what's divisive. This administration is creating the divisive abilities of this country, not Haitian immigrants who are here trying to create a better life for themselves, not Latino immigrants who are looking to create a better life for themselves, not Latino families who are trying to create better lives for themselves and say, okay, we can band together and afford our lives if we live together instead of separately, and paying $2,500, $2,600, $2,700, $4,000 for rent for a 1-bedroom apartment. So again, JD Vance is saying, we support the major companies. We support the business. We support the corporations of America that abuse Americans by raising rent prices so high versus the ability for actual Americans to afford a livable life. That is what JD Vance said in this, all while cloaking it in a dire blanket of racism, saying we should be able to choose who our neighbors are, and we should feel comfortable with who our neighbors are because we should be able to see them as white Christian nationalists. No one else should live in our neighborhoods. When the fuck, as Americans, did we ever get to pick our neighbors? I want to know that. Someone answer it for me. Someone fucking answer it for me. But just after this point, I tuned out. I was like, I can't do it. I can't do any more of JD Vance. I can't. I couldn't do any more of the lies. I couldn't do any more of the misrepresentations. I couldn't do any more of Miranda spouting out Republican talking points and MAGA talking points. I couldn't do any more of Justina Diva's bad eyeliner and the caked up face makeup. I couldn't do it. I was like, I need to stop. I need to get out of here. This is too much. So I stopped. But again, this is the problem in this administration, this interview that I watched 30 minutes of and was able to disprove with factual information and factual evidence and video shows that this administration continues to use rhetoric that's divisive and targets immigrants and immigration as evil, when in actuality, immigration is the fabric of America. Immigration is what creates the culture of America. And I don't remember who said this, but someone, I'm trying to specifically remember what was said here. Someone said immigration creates division. I'm trying to remember who said it. Someone said immigration creates division. And it's just untrue. What creates division is fear. So the fact that you don't know your neighbors, JD Vance, maybe you should just go next door and say, hi, I'm Justina Dieva. Dieva. Oh my God, please don't use my last name. No, sir. Just be like, hi, I'm Justina Diva. And like, who are you? I want to get to know you. Let me just make sure you're a good family, you know. Talk to people. That's how you create less distrust, by talking to your neighbors, not by racially profiling them as rowdy because there's 20 of them living in the apartment. America's expensive, JD Vance. Let people live with their families. Like, crazy. Anyway, guys, if you haven't, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. You guys can follow me right here on YouTube for the Civil Point podcast, as well as you can go on Facebook and TikTok and look up TCP clips, where you can find all of my clips for the podcast here. I really do appreciate you guys. I really do appreciate the comments, because I love getting everyone's point of view. Even you maggots are in my comments. I love it. Like, love a good point of view. But get some taste, get some brains, get some education. But I hope each and every one of you have an amazing Halloween tonight, because Halloween is amazing. And it's like literally my favorite holiday of the year. It is. It's literally my favorite holiday of the year. So enjoy your Halloween. Be crazy, but be like a little bit safe. Don't like get abducted. You know, ICE is out here abducting people in like unmarked vans and stuff. So if you're dressing as something Latino based, just be careful, because they're racially profiling people out here. Anyway, enjoy your Halloween. Subscribe to The Civil Point with your host, Ariana Dieva, and I will catch you guys on the next episode. Bye.